Right, before we get to the West Ham stuff, a few of you have been asking, it's not easy to do. This dog has grown. A lot of you have been asking, so here he is. Hold on. He's almost... We're getting beyond the stage that he could be picked up anymore. He's just... he's a zippy. He's sniffing the microphones. You can probably hear him sniffing. Don't know how well you can see him there. He's a big, big boy. He's 14 kilograms at the moment. He's going to grow to nearly 40 kilograms. And now he's... Right, let's put you down. I don't know how much he's going to behave, but a few of you have been asking. Right, stop biting now. A few have been asking. He's a big boy. He's had training. We're sort of halfway through his training. He is, even though he's a puppy, so he's just over 16 weeks old, he's nearly 17 weeks old. He is significantly bigger than a lot of the dogs when we go to the park. So, yeah, he's not as he is gorgeous, but he's a right feisty one. I'll tell you that much. But actually, he's really come on leaps and bounds in the last couple of weeks. I haven't been featuring him on the videos because the weather's been so bad. I didn't want to bring him in here, and he comes all the way through the garden, and then I get absolutely covered in muck and all the rest of it just before a video. So that's been the only reason. He's here. He's well. So some people have said, have you had enough with a pup? No. He's good as gold. We're getting on very well. We make a good team, don't we, Zippy? Although he is trying to eat my headphones at the moment. I've got a little bit more of an update for you later on. So if you like dog stuff and stuff like that, hang around until later on. I've got something else to talk to you about. We'll do that at the end of the video. I might have to kick him out in a second because he's going to make it very, very difficult for me to do this. Go on. I was going to say, go and eat your antler. He has actually got an antler. No reindeer were harmed in getting this antler, by the way, just so as you know. They fall off naturally, apparently. There you go. Anyway, transfer stuff. Tim Steidten's having very little to do with transfers. That's the headline for this video, I think. So there's been a lot of communication between the club and all their top sources. I've had communication with the club myself as well. And they've let it be known that they are working flat out to try and do deals at the moment. But as I've said to you in previous videos, there's a couple of things that don't quite equate and don't quite fit. Let's put it this way. I would feel, not that the club have said this, these are my words, not the club's words, but I feel that Tim Steidten's on the naughty step. All right? And because I think the club feel that the two best transfers that were done over the summer, and you might think differently about this, were Max Kilman, which is obviously recommended by Lopetegui, and of course Aaron Wan-Bissaka, which is a Will Salthouse, Unique Sports Management, I think that's what they're called, one of his clients there. The club don't feel that Nicolas Füllkrug, Luis Guilherme and Jean-Claire Todibo have been particularly good transfers. And that was what, if you like, Steidten was given. They say a blank cheque. It's not a blank cheque. He wouldn't have been allowed to sign Guilherme for 100 million or Jean-Claire Todibo for 100 million or anything like that. But that's what the players that he was given, enough leeway to be able to, what it seems to be, hang himself with, basically. They've given enough rope to hang himself with. And it seems like because of that, there's a very, very finite amount of money left to spend in this transfer window. But business is going to be done in this transfer window. They're very, very clear on that. And they're working, well, in their own terms, flat out to get deals done. But Steidten's not the one working on them. Basically, there's a list of names and Sullivan is working on them. And that's just what's happening at the moment. I think the most odd thing about all of this is that Lopetegui, as I mentioned in the previous video, is still having some input. What's the point? What is the point? Look, as I always say, I've said this the last month or so, I don't expect him to be here at the end of the season, to start of next season. You don't expect him to be here at the start of next season, and I don't think the club expects him to be here at the start of next season. So in that sense, I'd be keeping him well away from any transfer stuff. I think there's a level of sympathy within the club for Lopetegui. Because since September, Lopetegui's been saying, I need another striker. This is not good enough. So I don't know. You can only imagine what sort of conversations go on behind closed doors in the club. I'd imagine part of it is Lopetegui saying, I've not been able to do what you asked me to do because I've not had a striker yet. I've not had what I was promised when I joined. I don't know, I'm making this conversation up, but this is what I'm imagining it, and I think there's some sympathy from the club thinking, okay, we've still not seen the best of what Lopetegui can do. Clearly there's someone at the club who thinks Lopetegui can still do something, or he wouldn't still be in place, right? And just because I've lost faith in him, or you've lost faith in him, I don't want to speak on your behalf, of course, doesn't necessarily mean that the club have totally. But I think it's probably a very, very slim minority of board members who have, still got some sort of faith in Lopetegui. But I think he's been pushing for this striker, and I just think that there's every possibility that even if West Ham get this new striker, and I think we will, that Lopetegui doesn't get to use him at all. And so for that reason, you probably... This is why it was so important to have a director of football, but a director of football that the whole club got behind. And the director of football creates the club ethos. He creates the club identity. He creates how the style of football is going to be. And because of that, it almost doesn't matter which manager comes in. Whichever manager's replaced plays the same style. Brighton would be a good example. Once they got rid of Chris Hughton, they decided on a style of play that they wanted. So it didn't matter that they got rid of Graham Potter. They then bring in De Zerbi. He plays a similar style. I know Herzler's changed it slightly, but they're technical players. They're not switching between long ball and tippy-tappy football, if you want. I think what West Ham have done is, well, we know this because Lopetegui's told us. We know that Lopetegui is a defensive manager, and he has said when he came in, he was given three tasks that he was mandated to do. One of them was change the style of football, be more attacking, create more chances, score more goals. It wasn't really his thing. So I think we've got half an idea of what our identity should be, but we've asked a defensive manager to deliver us attacking football, in essence. And I think that's why it's so important that this stuff is led by a director of football. It can't be at West Ham because our director of football is not trusted. The other day I did a video and somebody wrote on it that he said, Gonzo, you seem to like building up David Moyes and knocking down Tim Steidten. And I mean, it's a funny one. I'm not, far be it from me, if that's how I've come across, I don't want to act like I'm trying to build up David Moyes. Far from it. I've been critical of him when I think he needs criticising. I think my point was, I thought it was time to replace David Moyes. And I think it was right to replace David Moyes. We just got the replacement wrong. So it wasn't like all I was saying was that I felt the club needed a big character. And David Moyes was that. That's probably why he lasted as long as he did. Because you've got to be able to stand up to people, and Moyes could do that. Does that mean I still blame Moyes for the way he allowed the team to crumble in the last year, and he couldn't quite... All the stuff that I said, didn't make substitutions quickly enough, was too defensive against teams like Sheffield United and stuff like that. But it's not binary, it's not black and white. There was still lots of good things that David Moyes did. So I wasn't trying to build him up, or I wasn't trying to knock Tim Steidten down. My point with Tim Steidten is this. I have zero evidence that Tim Steidten can get on with a head coach or a manager at West Ham. Zero. I have none. I have only seen Tim Steidten being director of football alongside two managers, David Moyes, who he fell out with, and Julen Lopetegui, who he's fallen out with. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to create anything that's not there. I'm just saying, at the moment, I have no evidence that he can get on with a new manager and evidence that he doesn't get on with managers. So, for the next one coming in, I just think whoever comes in next needs to be a strong personality. Anyway, it just does seem that West Ham's football is not going to be driven, our style of football, our mantra, our ethos is not going to be driven by the director of football. It's going to be driven by the manager. For that reason, it's absolute madness that Julen Lopetegui is having any say in a new striker coming in at all. Or a new striker, a new midfielder, whatever. As we've been saying for a couple of days now, striker is the main priority and a pacey, that's what the club is saying, a pacey midfielder. The club have identified there's no pace in midfield. Which brings us back onto the Evan Ferguson stuff. Now, since I did my video on Evan Ferguson yesterday, it would appear that Evan Ferguson's agents are pimping him out, basically. And he would like to move to London. And Brighton would consider a loan deal with an obligation to buy, but they will only... This is actually quite insulting, but it's true. It's insulting and true. Both are correct. They will only consider a loan deal to a club who are not competition. So apparently they won't loan Evan Ferguson to Fulham because they see Fulham as a threat, but they will loan him to West Ham because we're no threat. And this is Brighton. They've not won a game in 5, but they still look and see themselves as a top half team and a team that should be vying to get, like, top 8 might get European football. It's certainly top 7, I think. Top 8 might. So they see themselves as a top 8 team. They see Fulham as challengers as a top 8 team. West Ham, you're no threat. You can have him. But as I said in yesterday's video, we would have to wait until the end of the transfer window. Wait until the end of the transfer window. You can absolutely forget it. There's no way. Well, I think so anyway. I know there's a lot of you right on this and say, Gonzo, get real. Lopetegui is going to be here for the remainder of the season. Sullivan will never sack him. And I understand why you think that. And there's probably more evidence for you to think that than for me to think, oh, he's got to get rid of him. But I've always been like this. I always think, surely it can't carry on. Surely you can't keep this guy in place. And I do tend to be wrong on that, by the way. So, but I think maybe it's the... is it optimism? If you want someone to be sacked, it's probably a completely different character trait, isn't it? I have no ill feeling towards Lopetegui, and I have a certain level of sympathy for him, particularly given his personal circumstances. I just don't want him to be the West Ham manager anymore, or head coach, or whatever you want to call it. So I just think, well, there's no point, because as every Lopetegui, in my opinion, at least in my little world in which my own head operates in, I don't think that Lopetegui will be here to coach any new striker, so why involve him in the process at all? I just don't get it. I don't understand it. I think it's an absolute nonsense. Anyway, I do firmly believe that we are trying to get players in. It wasn't worth a video on its own, by the way. I don't know if you heard this, but Ivan Juric, the Southampton manager, has pretty much said, Cornet, you can have him back. And one of the reasons being for that, as I understand it, or one of the reasons given in the stuff that I read, was that you can have 2 domestic loans. And they already have 2, and one of them is obviously Maxwell Cornet. So they want to give him back. Basically, there's a clause where both clubs can mutually terminate the agreement. So Southampton can say to West Ham, you can have him back, but we have to agree. Now, look, West Ham have already got him off the payroll. I find it hard to believe that West Ham would have someone to sell him onto. But let's put it this way. If we were able to recall, and we had a gentleman's agreement where we could recall James Ward-Prowse, do I think we could then sell James Ward-Prowse onto someone else? I do. And it's a different argument. It's a different video whether we would bring him back and he would play. I think he gets into the current midfield as it is now, but just forget that for a second. Could we sell him if we wanted to? Yes, there would be buyers out there. If we recalled Maxwell Cornet, could we go and sell him? No, I don't think anyone would buy him. And why would they? Again, we talk about evidence. I have zero evidence. You have zero evidence over the last 2 years that he can play football. He can't. It's the same thing with evidence. All you can do is deal with the evidence that's in front of you. So would anyone pay money for Maxwell Cornet? No. So in that sense, why would West Ham take him back? Is any new manager going to use him? No. Will Julen Lopetegui use him? No. Are his wages currently off the books? Yes. So I think the best thing that can happen, I think Southampton might be able to send him back, but I think they might pay up his contract for the rest of the year and pay his wages and pay everything they were going to pay if he'd have stayed there until May, and they'll pay it up, and then he still comes back, and that, for them, that frees up a spot and they can bring someone else in. I think that possibly could happen. Right, I'm going to wrap it up there. Before I do, I'm coming to you with a bit of a begging bowl now, and I feel a bit bad doing it. But if you're an animal lover and you love dogs, and I'm aware there's lots of you in the chat here, I'm just going to tell you a little story now, and it's actually about Zippy's best mate. His name's Jeff. It's not a person. It's a dog. Now, basically, Jeff... Well, I'll cut straight to the chase. Jeff needs an ear operation or he's going to be put down. So Jeff's owners have started up a GoFundMe page to basically try and pay for it. Now, the reason they can't pay for it is Jeff is a rescue dog, and I don't know how long they've had him. Not a year, less than a year. It's not a dog that's unknown for me. I'll try and pop a picture up. So I look after Jeff and the other dog, Cleo. If you see I'll probably pop a picture up. If you see a King Charles Spaniel in there, that's Cleo. Jeff is he's a Sharpie, not a pen. He's a Chinese dog. But funny enough, he understands it when I say come sit and stuff like that. So he speaks English, right? A Sharpie is I think that's what they're called. Sharpie. I've got a Sharpie. He's one of them. There you go. when they got him, he was a rescue dog, and because he had already had these conditions, you can't get insured on a dog that already had conditions. And they brought him on with the best will in the world. Now he actually has to have his whole ear removed and the ear canal and everything like that. He's a lovely dog. He's one of the few dogs that will tolerate a little Labradoodle puppy jumping on top of him. They've created a GoFundMe page. The vets are going to try and bring the costs down as much as they can. I'll put the link in the description below. Even if you got £1, it would be very, very much appreciated. And I am very aware that I've asked you for money before, and we asked you for a lot of money at Hammer's Chat, and you guys were so generous with Gio when he was getting married and the baby was coming and all that sort of thing. I don't expect it of you, but I just thought I'm going to try and use whatever platform I may or may not have just to try and see if we can get Jeff his operation. He gets if you look at it on the page, it says let's keep Jeff jumping. He actually jumps fully up in the air. I don't mean he goes up on his back legs. When he gets excited, he's about to go out for a walk. He jumps up completely. He's a lovely, lovely dog, and funny enough, Zippy was actually with him last night. He's only 6 years of age. I think he's 6, something like that. He's halfway through his life. It'd be it would be a shame to have him put down, basically. So I said I'll do what I can. Any help would be very, very much appreciated. The link is in the description below, so there'll be a little drop down thing. If you can't see it, there's a little arrow. Drop it down. I'll put it up there. Any help would be much appreciated. Thank you for your time. And I'll catch up with you tomorrow with probably... Well, no, I was going to say, won't be more transfer tittle tale. We've got a bloody game. We've got a game. We got to get thrashed against Man City tomorrow. I'll catch up with you then.